Welcome back to another episode of Sound Pals Go to the Movies. This is another Throwback Thursday review, and today I'll be reviewing the movie Man on the Moon. And just a fair warning, there's going to be spoilers up ahead, so you've been warned. This movie is the life and career of legendary comedian Andy Kaufman. So let's begin with my first pro. This movie is a biographical drama of Andy Kaufman and his career and life. So for those who may not know Andy Kaufman, he was a comedian who would refer to himself as a singer and stage act. He was known by so many for his SNL appearances, his character Tony Clifton, and being on the show Taxi as the character Lafka. He was misunderstood because he saw comedy differently than others, and thus is why everybody after his death wanted to understand him even more. And this film sheds some light on what that may have been. Next pro, the cast in the film. Well, it's not about who and how they played them, but more like some of the cast that were playing themselves. For example, Paul Schaefer, the musician from The Late Show, was himself in the film, same as David Letterman, or Lorne Michaels from Saturday Night Live, or even Jim Ross or Jerry Lawler. And most of the cast from Taxi as themselves, except Danny DeVito, because he was already playing George Shapiro, Andy's agent, and the real George Shapiro was playing the first club owner in the film. But to have all these people come just to play themselves in the film is quite an amazing task and accomplishment, and yet it hardly decoded who really Andy was. Next pro, the acting of the cast. There are some actors that really surprised me that they were even here and did a solid job. Some that stood out, or rather didn't steal the spotlight but just popped out, was Norman MacDonald as the sketch member from the Friday show, same as Caroline Rhea in the same sketch as Norm, Courtney Love as Andy's girlfriend, and Patton Oswalt with the simple line, "Excuse me, are you Andy Kaufman?" But I really enjoyed Paul Giamatti as Andy's best friend, Bob. He did a good job acting and not stealing the light from Andy, and found the right balance, which I mean, no one could take the light away from the actor playing Andy because it's about his life. Side note, the real Bob was actually involved in the film behind the scenes, adding to the film. Next pro, this was made with the help from Andy's real friends in other departments in the background. Some of these people actually knew what really happened in some of those scenes that the public was not really aware of, and could shed some more light on them. But after the film, you are left with, if they knew him and knew his sense of humor, could they still be playing to some degree on the skit and leading us on a different path of the truth? Because if you think about it, that is what Andy would have done to keep the gag running. And now on to my cons. Okay, I think the ending was bad. So Andy's fans are going to watch this film and they will reach the part when he dies. And then his funeral happens. Then we see the scene after that that says years later, the camera entering the Comedy Store, and on stage is Tony Clifton. Okay, one of two things will go through people's heads. Is Andy still alive, or that's Bob on stage as Tony? But then the camera pans around the room. We see George sitting with Andy's girlfriend. Then we see other people. And finally, we see Bob standing in the audience in the back. So what happened? Are we supposed to pick what we want to believe in the movie about the life of Andy? Well, if that's the case, take the biography tag off the movie and slap a fiction tag on it, because we came to see real events, not this make up your own ending BS. Okay, I can hear people saying, what if the happiness that Andy was looking for was his friends all enjoying his performances? And it's a metaphor to which I will say, you really think Andy would have gone with that ending versus something like the opening scene? I don't think so, and that's why I believe the ending was really bad. Next con. The biggest one that I have and takes the cake was that they got many things out of order. And yes, at the start of the film, Andy, or Jim Carrey, goes on stage and says that this is not his film, that he doesn't want it, that it's really bad, and that he cut some of the things out to make it shorter. But I gotta say, even if they did that little message, it really missed major parts and events of Andy's life, as how he went from the kid where we saw performing in the room by himself to right away doing stand-up comedy in a club. What happened during that gap? Do we not know? Well, as a fan, when I was looking up things about Andy when I first saw him and I was exposed to him, I found out about when he went to college and that he did drugs and the son that he had out of wedlock. Heck, even his Elvis impersonation came from the time that he was in college. There's a story that he actually says he was on campus, that a club came up to him and invited him to the talent show, but the club was mostly African Americans and they invited a white guy, and he took the stage and did his performance and they really liked it, and that's how he came up with the impression of Elvis Presley. He even says if he was invited just to be made fun of, he still went on stage and performed, and he loved the fact that he won them over and were cheering him on, even though that he knew he was a token white guy. So don't you think this would have played well before we actually saw him take the stage, bridging the gap between his childhood and his stage career? One other big issue, the fact that his spiritual meditation was downplayed, makes it seem like he did it because it was goofy or weird, but in fact, he has said before passing away that he felt that meditation kept him alive and sane by keeping him away from drugs and other bad things in his life. So why would you downplay something like this in a film about his life and career when in real life he really talked about it and believed in it and attributed to him being sober and staying away from drugs? Okay, so I'm going on and on about this. So I will end it here with just this. The film is heavily edited and events are mixed up in chronological order. We saw what some might have wanted us to see, but in my personal opinion, it was not the real Andy. And therefore, I didn't like how this film was composed. So my final grade for this movie is going to be a 6.5 out of 10. So is this film for fans of Andy or people who wanted to really find out who he really was? The answer is no. Is this a film that people who aren't interested in the real Andy, but more interested in the persona that Andy would play on stage? I would say yes. These people will probably go in not having any previous information about the real life of Andy and take the film as 100% truth. Is this bad? I would say no, because in one way or another, they are getting exposed to the idea of Andy Kaufman and his comedy. Yes, maybe later down the line, they might come back and look more into his life and find films and find information about his real life and say, hey, that movie was not quite accurate, and come to hate the film for doing this and not giving us what we wanted. Some will point out that maybe Andy would have done this film this way, and others would say no, he would not come out and do this kind of film and then leave people wondering if it's the truth. Overall, this film is not for fans, but rather a small one-sided pamphlet that tries to unravel who Andy really was, but in the end, it does fail. So that does it for this review of Man on the Moon. Please join us next time where we're going to review Lost in Translation.
What can I get you?
I'm not sure.
For relaxing times, make it Suntory
time.
I'll have a vodka tonic.
Please like, comment, and subscribe. You can find our social media links below. And like always, keep watching movies.